Okay, so let's get started. My name is Yasmin Faroqi Shah. I am a professor at the University of Maryland, and I have been at the University of Maryland for over 20 years, and I have been doing research on aphasia for 30 years now, exactly from 1996. So this is a topic that is very dear to my heart, and people with aphasia are very special to me. Even though I'm a speech language pathologist, I work with all different conditions. Aphasia is my very favorite empathetic condition that I like to work with. So, what we are going to do actually is do an outline. We are going to talk about what is Talk Slow Day, just as a background, and then go behind some science to understand it. And then we'll chit chat about any thoughts you all have. So you all know you are actually, many of you here are the people who started Talk Show Day. And it was started by you, the Mid-Atlantic Aphasia Conference 2 years ago. This is the third year. It was started to encourage people to have better communication, and it was as a special consideration for those with neurological issues such as aphasia. I think I am actually very impressed by the work that MAC does, how creative you all are in the very many initiatives you have. And Talk Slow Day was much, much needed. And I'm surprised that no one had thought of this or initiated this before. But better late than never. So thank you to Mark for sending me some quotes and poems prepared by people with aphasia, highlighting talk the benefits of talking slow. I was not able to put everything here, but here are a few, and I hope I have the authors' names correct. So one of them says, talking slow may be hard for you, but for those with aphasia, it's what we'd like you to do. It's so true. And this is part of a longer section. I think you're here. Sometimes I like to say it's better to be a little late than never, right? When you talk slowly. And here is what Mr. Gordon says when he does miss something. And at the end, we will talk about advocating for yourself. And so this is a nice phrase to use and make your own script, right? I have a brain injury. It's called aphasia. Even though I hear well, I miss words when listening, like I just did. And this is great advocacy to explain to others why talking slowly might benefit. And here are some haikus by Marg. Aphasia talking, speaking slow helps retention, intellect is good. Amazing, amazing for advocacy. Brain works, but speech hard. Like someone tickling my brain, slow down the fast talk. Wow, this is great. My ear listens well, and this is a theme we saw by Mr. Gordon as well, explaining to people that you can hear, you're not deaf, right? It's actually the processing that's a problem. So my ear listens well. Talking fast is a problem. For some, please slow down. Are any of you in the call today here? I think some of you are.
Uh, I think Gordon, you're here. I think
Yeah, I think.
so.
But thank you for sharing. So, I'm going to illustrate this person. Hold on. Can we hear her?
No.
No,
Okay. Can you hear her now?
no. I think you have to stop and like uh, don't share, and then come back again, and make sure that on the right side you have to make sure that you're sharing the uh, the
Audio.
audio. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
I think it's more share sound. I see that.
yeah.
Okay.
And there's Gordon. Hello, Gordon.
Hey, Mark.
Do you hear? I'm going to play it, but this is
as host 52.
I think some of you know her. She has been a radio show host in National Public Radio for over 50 years and she retired. Her name is Diane Rem. Now, she does speak slowly, but that's because she has vocal fold difficulties and that help make her vocal folds contract slowly. But that's not the point. Many listeners do not know about her voice problem, but when she was retiring and I heard her final episode on the radio, there were so many listeners who, sent comments and they all appreciated how she talked slowly and it helped them think, it helped them digest the information, and it reduced their stress. It helps them be in the present. So I just want to illustrate her speech if you're not familiar with it, because we want to be familiar with what is normal slow. And again, later on, if you want to advocate for yourself, help other people understand what you mean by slow, speak slowly. It's not like speaking so slowly that it's boring and you lose patience, right? It's a little normal slow. And so you can give the example of Diane Rem as an illustration, so they can, they have an example in mind. So let me play. Hope the sound works this time.
Years at WAMU, I'm moving on. I've loved my life here. As host of the Diane Rehm Show, I had the opportunity to speak with presidents and poets, scientists, Supreme Court justices, and
Okay, so I'm going to pause. We don't want to hear the whole thing, but you get the idea. She speaks slowly, deliberately, but it's not unnatural, right? Unlike when somebody speaks like this, they are pausing after each word, right? That's unnatural. So she has this really nice, pleasant way of speaking. And this is kind of what we want to demonstrate to others who are trying to practice it, especially our loved ones. So, what are your thoughts? I just want to hear all of you. What do you think? Fred?
Yeah. See, I'm from New York. We have a habit of talking fast, right? So we have to figure it out. And plus, I had a stroke and aphasia, so I have to learn how to speak slowly.
That is very true. People from different parts of America speak at different speeds, and it's also a personality issue. Yes, so you had to learn to speak slowly, and you also have aphasia.
Yes.
And later at the very end, we'll talk about whether speaking slowly benefits people with aphasia and what it benefits with. So we'll discuss some science. Any other thoughts?
I try to keep. I try to keep saying something, but it's hard for me to be fluent. So that they are. She is very fluent, and she is talking very well. Uh, I try to be more engaging with my uh, voice and stuff, but it is hard because I'm always thinking as I speak.
That's correct. And that's understandable. Obviously, we were looking at Diane Dream to kind of help people understand what we mean by normal slow.
Mhm,
Of course, Diane Dream does not have aphasia.
mhm,
So, her speech is coming out smoothly. But this is a great example to show to your loved ones to say, this is the rate that I want you to speak, and,
mm.
things like that. So, yeah.
Okay,
That's an
thank you.
example because people don't always understand what it means to speak slowly.
of course,
Um, I'm going to just show one more video. And this is just a normal, regular person. He is, a YouTuber. But as you know, in YouTube, you can change the speed, the playback speed. So I just want us to reflect on a fast playback speed and think about how we hear it or understand it or we miss the words, so that if you are not a person with aphasia, you can kind of understand and empathize that when I speak fast, this is how a person with aphasia is hearing it. Because again, sometimes we need to explain what aphasia feels like, right? So this is one way that, again, I'm talking on behalf of people with aphasia. If you wanted to advocate for yourself, you need to explain what you want with talking slow. And then you also want to explain how it sounds to you. It's not exactly the same, but how you might be feeling when you're hearing like a normal or fast rate. So again, I'm going to play just 30 seconds at a normal speed and then at a fast speed. And you can do the same kind of exercise with anybody to explain to them why they should be speaking slowly and what effect it has on you when they speak too fast. Oh, advertisement. This is the problem with getting videos from YouTube.
A Science and Kirk success story. Meet
Skip,
Pat.
skip, skip.
Dancing is her thing, and helping kids through her youth literacy.
Okay.
You've probably heard that walking is good for you, but what most people don't realize is just how powerful it actually is. Walking can literally change the structure of your brain, and it can rewrite how your nervous system responds to stress, and it can improve how your cells produce energy. And walking
Okay, so that's this person's normal speaking rate, right? So now let's use this settings option, and we are going to change the speed. I'm going to change the speed to 1.5, and you will see why, because there are research studies kind of showing that the processing speed of people with aphasia is 1.5 times slower. But if you want to, give a more dramatic effect to your loved ones, you can of course increase the speed more. But let's just do 1.5.
also lowers your blood sugar, and it reduces your risk of heart attacks and strokes, and it can even protect against dementia. But because walking sounds so simple, most people don't take it seriously. It's treated more like a backup plan, something that you do when you don't have time for a real workout, or something that just doesn't really move the needle. But the framing
Thoughts? Does the
Yes.
second speed sound a little more difficult?
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
again, exactly. And so again, like I said, if you're explaining to your son, your daughter, your, spouse, your family, brother, sister, whoever, do this. Do this to explain to them. Like, and you can increase the speed up to twice just to show them this is how fast it feels to me as a person with aphasia, and, to kind of explain to them. Okay,
is
now
completely
moving on. Um, in terms of now slowly moving on to the science, when we talk about talking slowly, we can say, okay, I understand talking fast, talking slowly, but scientists and researchers and speech language pathologists might actually measure it. Just like you measure your height, your weight, things like that, we measure the rate of speaking, and it's measured by words per minute. And basically, you would record yourself saying something, then you count the words, then you get how long it took you to say that, because you can see the size of your audio, and then you divide the words by the total minutes, and you get words per minute. Okay, so that's the measure, and we will keep coming back to words per minute later. So the range is typical range for Americans is 90 to 200 words per minute. Very large range, right? Like Fred said, he's from New York. He was probably speaking closer to 200 words. Somebody from New Orleans probably speaks closer to 90 words. There's a range, and it's a pretty normal range. And we watched Diane Rem. She's probably speaking at 110 words per minute or so. And so again, these are just numbers, there's average is 140. So when we just watched the video of the doctor, he was probably at 140 words. And then when we sped it up, he was speaking at more than 160 words. So that kind of also tells you, gives you a number. If somebody is trying to work on their slowing their speech, these numbers are somewhat helpful. I can't always see if you're raising your hand to ask a question, so just feel free to speak up and I can stop and explain anything. So now we're going to look at the science of talking slow. Does it help us? Does it hurt us? What do we know about, talking slow? So first I'm going to introduce the background, which is what is neuron conduction, and then what is processing speed. So as you know, we have billions of neurons in our brain, not thousands, not hundred thousands, not millions. We have billions of neurons in the brain. The brain is a very crowded place. In fact, they say about 86 billion neurons in our brain. So a very, very large number. And these neurons are interconnected. They do connect. They speak to each other. And so there is a connection or a network for speaking words. There's a network of neurons that help with grammar. There's a network of neurons that help with moving your mouth. So these are all like, think of different families just holding hands, right? So the neurons, there's one family for words, one family for grammar, one family for the motor part, one family for memory, and so on. So they are all like interconnected. They're holding hands. And so, and these neurons that are interconnected, they're talking, or they're communicating. And their speed of communication varies a lot depending on the type of neuron, the type of network, how much like fat it has around it, and so on. So it varies a lot. But typically, if you had to think about a typical healthy neuron, and you have to think about how fast is that, right? A healthy neuron that's conducting can go from one end of the football field to another end. How many yards? 100 yards is that? In 1 second. So that's how fast our neurons, communicate, if that kind of gives you an analogy. So the speed with which the neurons run across the football field, how fast they conduct, it affects your processing speed or your reaction time. That's another word for it. And so what's processing speed? Let's say you're driving, you see a red light, and you suddenly push the brakes, right? It's your reaction time. That's the same as processing speed because you looked at the right light, you were looking, then you decided, oh, I need to press the brakes, and you press the brakes. So you're doing a lot of things, but that total speed is called processing speed. Any thoughts, any questions?
I thought that was, talking about how many words does a, normal person talk every day. And, like there are, I actually
Sorry,
wrote I
this
actually
one?
wrote,
Uh-huh.
I actually wrote a poem about the, how many words that I was speaking for how many days till I had my stroke. Like
Wow.
from like this job I had to that, was seven months for this job, and all of a sudden it was like a crash of words, just gone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Uh,
Go ahead.
Yassine, yes, thank you. I was thinking a few minutes ago, as far as communicating with my wife, she knows all about me. And when she's tired in the evening, she gets frustrated with me, and I'm wide awake, and I speak the same at the same speed, right?
Mhm.
And she, like, sometimes I get frustrated when I can't remember a word or a phrase. And she gets uh, a little frustrated when, even though she knows. And so I'm coming up to a question. So
Sure.
so I don't need to ask her to slow down her talk. Um, it helps being from a very small town in North Carolina, but and she speaks very, very well. Um, so instead of, I don't feel like I need to ask her to slow down her speech, but I ask her to repeat what she said. I don't know anything else to do other than, after I have just a general rule, if I miss a word or a phrase 3 times, then I stop and I just forget about it. And and she would prefer if I only asked once. But especially during watching a show on TV and it's suspenseful, and I don't want to miss a word, regardless whether it's suspenseful or anything, because I don't want to miss a word, because I've become very literal since I had my stroke even 12 years ago. I'm still like that. And so it's hard for me not to ask her. Um, some people, like in business, I have a small business and I meet with people at times. It's easier on the telephone and it's easier in the morning. But as far as speed, um, it's frustrating because I don't want to tell them unless I need to. Um, and most people, not everybody, even in the South, not everybody is patient. So I guess my question is, other than speed, I guess I need to ask people to slow their speed, um, instead of asking them to repeat themselves 2 and 3 times. Does that make sense?
That's a great question. You brought up a few important things. One is it's worse at the end of the day, right?
Yeah.
And obviously, at the end of the day, everybody is a little tired. And we can think about our brain as having a limited budget. And if you have a limited budget, you might use up your budget by the 20th of the month, right? Similarly, when a person has had a brain injury or when a person is older, their brain budget shrinks a little bit. And so if you have not had a nap or if you have not had some quiet time, some relaxation during the day, then by 6 p.m. or 5 p.m., really your brain budget is at the very, very bottom of your, bank account. So that's one of the things that seems to be happening. And
That's
you're right.
I'm sorry. Can I ask you, since you said that, this is very interesting to me. I know for my wife, uh, she looks a good bit younger than I am, but she's only 4 years younger. But she doesn't always exercise, and I've suggested that she would either walk or go to the gym on a regular basis, because um, she she becomes uh, easily frustrated or irritated in the afternoon, like you were just saying.
Yeah,
Just saying.
that's a good point. Um, And the video that we watched of the doctor talking about walking, that's such a great video. I'm going to forward it to you because it actually talks about the brain benefits of walking and the mood benefits of walking. So
Oh,
definitely
please do.
worth watching. Yeah. So we get the idea of processing speed, which is the speed at which your entire nervous system is conducting its business, right? So now let's look at some findings. And so the question is, I didn't show you the video of the neuron firing, but I think you all understand inside our brain, the billions of neurons are firing. Um, and then the question is, in a living, moving person, how do we measure how fast is your processing speed? How fast is your neural conduction? So there are many, many computer tasks that are used to measure processing speed because it's a proxy for your neural conduction. In fact, if you're like interviewing to be a pilot or an engine driver, you actually have to take some reaction time or processing speed tasks to show that you can react quickly. So here's an example of a task of processing speed that we use in my lab. So basically you're looking at two images. Here's apples with two colors, and you just have to push a button on the keyboard to say, are these two pictures the same or different? So one finger for same, another finger for different. You're supposed to do it as fast as you can. Very simple task. People with aphasia get almost 90 to 100% correct on this task. Not surprising, it's just the same different task. So that's what task we use. Another task we use is to measure processing speed, but for language, right? Because we are interested in aphasia. And so here's a similar task. You see a word and you have to say, is this a real word in English or not? Again, you push one finger for real word, another finger for not a real word, like a nonsense word like this one. And so using the keyboard time, we can measure your processing speed. So it's very simple to measure processing speed, of the neurons. So now let's look at what we know about aphasia and age with these studies. So first of all, this is the processing speed task. Let me explain what you're looking at. On the y-axis, on the vertical, is the time. How long did it take to push the button on the keyboard? And then we have three bars for three different groups of people. College age adults. So lower bar means you're faster, right? College age adults in white. In gray, we have age matched adults. So these are people about the same age as people with aphasia. Oftentimes we have the spouses participate in the research. So those are age matched adults. And in black, we have people with aphasia. Okay, so you can see obviously that processing speed does get slower with age, right? Compare the young people with the older adults. It does get slower with age. And then it also gets slower with aphasia, as you can see, but not a very significant amount. People with aphasia are 1.2 times slower than their peers. Okay, 1.2. So remember how in the YouTube video we changed the speed to 1.5. So you can see that benefit of slowing down is about 1.5. So you don't have to slow down too much, 1.5. And people with aphasia are about 2 times slower than college-aged persons. So this is again great information for you to use and share with others and also understand why sometimes things take more time for you. So this is just the same different task. It has nothing to do with language or words, right? So now let's look at the effect of words, processing words. So they are reading a word, you're deciding if it's a real word in English or not. Here again, we have the graph. Same type of graph. On the y-axis, we have how fast it takes. The shorter the graph, the faster it takes. And people with aphasia are a little slower than their peers, and the peers are slower than young adults. So again, lexical speed or word speed, right, gets slower with age. People with aphasia are again 1.2 times slower than same-aged persons and about 1.5 times slower than college-aged persons. So our take-home message is neural speed slows down with age, and neural speed further slows down with aphasia. And this happens even for general things like looking at two pictures and deciding if they're same or different, and also for language. So, what is our take-home message for people with aphasia who are on this call? Be kind to yourself if you're slow. Don't, frustrate yourself. It is an effect of the stroke. Educate those around you. I think you experience aphasia every day. You know what it's like, but other people do not quite understand what it is to have aphasia. So you can use findings from science to show them that this is how my brain works as a person with aphasia, and so on. And as you can see, your spouse, who's probably around the same age range as you, is also getting slower with age, right? So I'm sure they'll have empathy that it's just a natural process that happens. And then finally, advocate for yourself. And as Mr. Gordon said, it's not always the case that you need slowed speech. Sometimes it is repetition. Sometimes it's, the end of the day. There are other factors, not just the speed, but it's important to have a script ready so that when you encounter somebody who's talking too fast, you can explain to them that it helps me if you talk slowly. It helps me if you repeat information. Be patient with me if I ask for repetition and things like that. What if you are a loved one of a person with aphasia? Show empathy when the person with aphasia speaks slowly or asks you to repeat or speak slowly. And speak slowly yourself. Have the Diane Rem effect, right? That is a good pace. It's not unnatural, but it's also very calming and kind of very deliberate. And then, as a person who can speak fluently, advocate for your loved one by educating others. So, other relatives, extended family, somebody new, explaining to them about processing speed and the benefits of slow speech. So now we are going to look at the science part two. The first part, we talked about processing speed and what we know in aphasia. And in part two, we are actually looking at language studies and research findings. So we are going to look at the effect of speech rate, so words per minute, in persons with aphasia on understanding speech as well as speaking. So two parts, on listening and then speaking. So the research on speech rate and understanding speech has been done since the 1980s. So there's 40 plus years of research on the effect of talking slowly by others on people with aphasia. And they have also looked at this in healthy adults, so those who don't have aphasia, and then people who have aphasia. And when they change the speech rate, they do many different things. They manipulated many different things. For example, they change the words per minute. They put a pause after every word, or they put a pause at phrase boundaries. I'm going to explain that. So here is a sentence I took from the website of Talk Slow Day. And if you had to insert pauses after every word, it would be like this, right? One, great, way, two, you get the idea. And they have looked at how does that affect the understanding of people with aphasia. Another thing they have done is inserting pauses, but only at the junctions where you would have a comma typically. So that is called after each phrase. So one great way to celebrate Talk Slow Day is to invite. You see, so I'm pausing after phrases. I'm not pausing after every word. So those are manipulations that people have done. And so what are the findings? First, both older adults and people with aphasia benefit from the pauses between words and the pauses after phrases. So they benefit from both. Although we know the word, for, word, pause sounds unnatural, there's benefit in understanding. The phrase pauses also help. Who benefits? So not every person with aphasia benefits. That's important to know. The people who benefit more from a slow rate are people with more severe aphasia. And if you've had testing for your aphasia by a speech language pathologist, they get a score for your understanding ability. So if your understanding ability is worse, then you benefit more from a slowed speech rate. Okay, so it's important to know that the benefit of other people slowing speech is not the same for everybody. More severe aphasia, more severe comprehension difficulty, those are the people who benefit the most. And what kind of slowing helps the most? It is actually the phrase boundaries. And as you know, it's more natural as well. So the greatest benefit is after phrase boundaries. And the greatest benefit in terms of words per minute is about 120 words per minute. And again, I think that is the Diane Rem rate. That's why I kind of showed her video. And people with aphasia were also given in another study, they were given has to listen to different speech rates, and they were asked, which do you prefer? Which do you personally prefer the most? And they also went with 120 words per minute. So one, the listening benefit is best at 120 words per minute, and the personal preference, like this sounds good to me, that's also at about 120 words per minute. So that's your key number to give to other people. And there are also, more recently, we listen and read at the same time. So for those of you on this call who have turned on captions, you're hearing me and you're also reading the captions. So there have been studies again for how fast are the captions being presented and how fast are the words being presented. And again, it comes around to 120 words per minute. So that was about understanding, the benefit of talking slowly on understanding. Now we are going to move on to the benefit for people with aphasia when they speak slowly. Now, people with aphasia, many of them do naturally speak slowly. And the question is that helping in any way? Or is it just an effect of the severity of the aphasia? So, work on speaking and slowness is actually less. There's actually just a handful of studies on speaking and slowness, and it's only been done in the past 10 years. Understanding and slowness, there's been a lot of research. Speaking and slowness, less. And one of the questions we ask is when a person with aphasia is pausing, is speaking slowly, are they benefiting from it? Is it helping them plan their speech? Is it helping them retrieve their words? Like what's going on, right? And then again, people have looked at the effect of severity and as also whether the speaking slowly benefits word retrieval, whether it benefits grammar. Now, some people with aphasia do have more trouble with grammar than other people, so we have also looked at that. And then going back to processing speed, whether processing speed is related to speaking slowly. That is, people with aphasia have slow processing speed. Does that actually relate to them speaking slowly as well? So let's look at the findings. Here again, the findings depend on the severity of aphasia. This is really important. It's not one size fits all. There are people with aphasia who actually have very, very, very mild aphasia, such that when you do an aphasia test, when a speech pathologist does an aphasia test, your scores do not fall under the aphasia diagnosis, but you know from a day to day that you have aphasia. You're struggling with words, it's harder, and so on. So that's called latent or silent aphasia. So, what we know is that people with latent aphasia, and many of you who are on this call, I assume have latent aphasia because of the way you speak. They pause longer in longer sentences. So in this study, the authors looked at how many times do you pause? So pause is when you're just quiet. How many times do you pause? How long do you pause? And how many words are in your sentence? Short sentence, long sentence, and so on. So what they found was people with latent aphasia, when they pause more, they speak longer sentences. So it's actually helping them. Then my own research has shown that people with latent aphasia, again, they are able to say more verbs. You know, verbs are those action words, give, run, eat, those kinds of action words. When they are doing more disfluency, so now this is a more general term, you might pause, you might say, you know, all of those collectively, um, they they also benefit, but only with verbs. So they are producing more verbs when they have more of these pauses and slowness. That doesn't mean they don't benefit with nouns. It's just that they already have nouns, right? They have latent aphasia. So they already have nouns. And so when they pause more, they produce more verbs. And verbs, you know, make a sentence. What about other aphasia, mild and moderate aphasia, which is, you know, more common? They also benefit from pauses or disfluencies, everything together, the silence, the what, the you know, all of that together. They actually say more nouns when they have more of these disfluencies. So there is a benefit as well. But it doesn't benefit with verbs. For that, you have to have much, much milder aphasia. Then the verbs are helped by pausing. They do not benefit with grammar. So if somebody is a person with aphasia who has grammatical difficulties, they talk in phrases and words but can't connect them to a sentence, the pausing doesn't help grammar, but the pausing helps produce more nouns. Okay. Final finding before we wrap up is processing speed. Remember, push a button as fast as you can, that kind of thing. So processing speed here is on the x-axis in seconds. And so bigger number means those people are slower. And on the y-axis, you have how long did that person pause. Now, this was very careful, tedious work done by my research assistants where we looked at every sentence of a person with aphasia and we measured manually, you know, how long was their pause, and then we added it up. So it was a very, very fine analysis. And what we see is that people who have slower processing speed actually are pausing more. So there's a relationship between your push a button on the keyboard, like the speed of your nervous system, and the speed of your speaking. So it is a general effect. Then again on the x-axis, horizontally, we have processing speed, same number. And then people who are slower in their processing speed, like 3.5, bigger number, they actually have more trouble with grammar. So on the y-axis, you have how many grammatically correct sentences they produce. So people with slower processing speed, as we saw, pauses don't help grammar. We saw on the previous slide. And then these people who have trouble with grammar also have slower processing speed. So to conclude, processing speed does slow down in aphasia, and it's related to more pauses while speaking. That is, if people with aphasia, a person has a slower processing speed, they are going to pause more. And they are also going to produce more ungrammatical sentences. So the take-home message, speaking slowly in aphasia is partly from processing speed changes, and speaking slowly helps with retrieving words and making longer sentences, but it does not help with grammar. And so that was the end of the science on talking slowly. Any thoughts, any next steps that you are thinking of, you know, I'm happy to hear and discuss. I can also stop sharing.
Is there any value with listening to the books on tape and helping with moving along or assisting with the process of our brain?
So your question is, there are books on tape, and is there any benefit of listening to them?
Yes. You know, like some people I hear just can't read, you know, anymore. They were avid readers and now they can't read. no longer, and then the books on tape, uh, and then
Mm-hmm. Yes, good
yeah, I
question.
started
Yeah.
out with one question and then I let you continue. So it was like, then I ended up with multiple questions that aren't filtered out in my brain to ask.
Sure, we can go one question at a time. So, yes, people with aphasia may also have what's called alexia. Alexia is difficulty with reading, and different people have different severity of aphasia, different severity of alexia. So, there is some trouble with reading for some people, and for others, reading is their strength. So, if you are a person who has alexia, that is difficulty with reading, it definitely helps to use the audio, what do you call it? Speech to, no, text to speech, right? And you can do that on your phone, you can do that on your computer, you can use an audiobook. Even if you had to read an email or a text message, there are apps where you can click on converting that text into a sound, a voice. So that definitely helps. Now, if the question is whether, Rebecca, I'll let you ask your next question.
I don't have it. It went away. Sorry.
No problem.
I know you were talking about like walking. I've done different types of research. They asked me to walk on a treadmill. Uh, they didn't, but they were telling me that physical exercise would help your brain uh, to heal, and so that uh, and I've been walking now, and I'm doing listening to books now with it. It's very hard for me to do it, and if I get to a point where I didn't know what it was, I'll stop it, or I'll go back with it, or I get a like a like a capture the time with it, and I'll go back to it later. Uh, so I've been I think it's been helping me listening a little better, a, a, a
Mhm.
little bit. So, but thank you.
There's a lot of research that, thank you for sharing. There's a lot of research on exercise and cognitive benefits. So, benefits on memory, on attention, and all those things. And we can think about the exercise research in two different ways. One is you get on a bicycle or you get on a treadmill and you walk or you run for 20 minutes, right? And you get your breath, you get breathless, you get your heart rate up, and that's called acute exercise. So that's just one bout of exercise, 20 minutes. And the researchers, they measure your performance before you got on the treadmill and after you got on the treadmill. So that's one kind of research. The other one is they ask you to do an exercise program or walking every day, 5 days a week or something like that, and then they measure the effects after 6 months. All right, so that's another pattern. That's called long-term exercise versus one bout of exercise. And the findings are a little different in both of those. Like many months of exercise, those studies, they help with memory. And there have been studies that show that people after those being in an exercise program or being a regular walker, their memory gets better. And the video that we just watched briefly, it
Mhm.
talks about that. It talks about how the memory area of your brain actually grows a little bigger with that kind of long-term walking. So 10,000 steps a day kind of thing. The short-term exercise, like get on the bicycle as fast as you can, at a healthy rate, and then let's measure your performance before and after the bicycle or the treadmill. I have myself done that kind of research as well, and I was particularly interested in whether it has benefits for language, right? Because as a speech pathologist, I want to see the effects on language. So I did the study on young adults and older adults. And what I found was there was an increase in processing speed. So they get faster at pushing a button. So definitely a short bout of exercise helps you become more alert, helps you become faster. Your nerves are conducting faster. What I did not see was an effect on producing more words, right? Speaking more correctly, naming more pictures correctly. I haven't seen an effect on that in healthy adults. Now, obviously, healthy adults, by healthy adults, I mean those without aphasia. Everybody's healthy, but those without aphasia, they already have been, they're already producing words very accurately. So maybe there was just no room for improvement. So my next step is to do that with people with aphasia. So to get them on a treadmill or a bicycle and see whether there is a language benefit. Because if there's a language benefit, it would be great because we could do a speech therapy session right after a bicycling or a treadmilling section, right? It could kind of enhance and prime your brain. We don't have research for that yet. So the benefits of walking or any kind of exercise on language, there's some new research happening, but we don't have any like findings yet. So that's a new area. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't walk or do exercise. There are benefits on memory, there are benefits on attention, alertness. There are many
Okay.
cognitive benefits. We just don't know about language at this point.
Okay.
When you first get up in the morning, do most people have the hardest time putting words together? Or in any studies you've done where you
Yeah, the time of day and word retrieval, I'm not aware actually of any study like that. Um, yeah, I will have to
hold the
look,
room?
but I have never come across such a study. It's a good point.
They
Are
take
you
hold in
talking
the
about
room.
before your cup of coffee or after your cup of
Oh, I
coffee?
don't drink coffee, so uh,
Maybe you should.
okay, because that word latent you said earlier, and then I can go, which I'm not doing today at all. I can go like I hate that word normal. I could be in a conversation where you wouldn't even pick me out of somebody with aphasia. Smooth. Everything's going really smooth. And it's like inside of me is so happy, but I'm not giving it away either. I'm not going to tell anybody, but it's the strangest thing.
Hmm.
I did learn something where you said that um, getting enough rest because it fades, the 3 o'clock phase in the day, nappy time.
The brain
Yeah,
budget. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
because Dr. Shaw, you said that earlier also that as the day goes on, the more tired you get, the harder it is to do things. And quite honestly, whether you've had a stroke or not,
Right.
that just sort of is what happens. So if you have heavy duty talking slash thinking things to do, best to plan to do those earlier in the day. And for a shorter amount of time, take a little break, come back and do a little bit more rather than trying to cram all of it in at once, because that will also fatigue
Exactly.
you.
Exactly. And this is for most of us, right? That, we reach the end of our brain budget and it's different for each person. And so we need to know what is our brain budget and we need to advocate for ourselves. And say, okay, I can do one doctor's appointment a day and then I need to go home and have quiet time. I cannot do doctor appointment, physical therapy, lunch with friends, like back to back because then you're exhausting your brain budget. So yeah, we need to know ourselves what is our budget and then we need to develop a script that helps us say those words politely that I have aphasia or I get tired and therefore I like to do one thing at a time or I like to talk when there is no background noise. I think advocacy, self-advocacy is very, very important.
Mm.
And I would add to that that the person to whom you're speaking in many ways appreciates that input. When you're talking with someone, the goal is to communicate and exchange ideas. If there's something as a listener, or no, I'm sorry, if there's something as a speaker that I can do that can make it easier for you to understand, tell me. I don't mind slowing down. I think sometimes we feel uncomfortable asking others to make accommodations for us, except we also know we would readily make accommodations for others if they told us.
Yeah.
So,
Exactly.
and you said
Exactly.
some other words, Dr. Shaw, that I thought were really interesting, knowing what your brain budget is. That's really important, what we can do and what we have a harder time doing. And again, whether you've had a stroke or not, that happens with everybody. I mean,
Yes.
honestly, don't call me after 9 o'clock at night, because let me tell you, my brain is clicked off. Ooh, choir rehearsal that goes after 9 o'clock is very bad for me. But you have to know your own strengths and areas that are a little bit more weak, and then use the strengths to help improve the weakness. And the only person that can do that is you. But it's good when you talk to other people about it, and the script is also an excellent idea. But there's nothing, it's a good thing to let people know, this is what really works for me. This doesn't work so well for me.
Yes, and I can share the example of my father who had Parkinson's disease. And he lived in India. My parents lived in India. So when I visited him, I noticed that people would, he had lots of nieces, nephews who would visit him and, be with him. They loved him, but they would actually not talk to him. They would talk around him, right? They would talk to my mother, asking about my father, whereas my father was sitting right there because they did not know how to accommodate his Parkinson's disease. So I made him a handout, like a little flashcard that says, I would love to talk to you directly. Please do like a few tips. And he had it laminated, he had multiple copies of it. And whenever somebody came home, it would be on the coffee table. He would first give it to them, and he'd wait till they read it. And then he and it really improved, I think, his social interactions. And in fact, I would also encourage my mother to leave the room, so that he's independent by himself. So yes, I think we need to advocate for ourselves. Have a printout, have something on your phone, whatever it is, so
I
that
was
you can
listening to
explain.
some of the aphasia Phil speak slow. A cousin of Rosie? No. I got Rose and Sal.
Yes.
Don't get frustrated with your
Cousins.
Yeah, what? So you met somebody? Somebody called you? Didn't do.
Does Vicky have a question
Yeah.
or?
The other thing, Dr. Shaw, that you just made me think of is I'm a singer, and I used to be a cantor in my church. And I still have a hard time doing that. And I would get absolutely petrified that I had to go up and sing by myself, until one day it sunk in that people that are out in the congregation are not listening thinking, oh, I hope she makes a mistake. People in the congregation are like, come on, you can do this. People around you really do want to help and support you. They're not waiting for you to, oh, make a mistake so I can say you did that wrong. That's not what people want to do. They really want to be there to help in some way. So it's actually a tremendous show of strength to say to someone, when you talk slower, I do better. So if you slow down, that's easier for me. That's just that shows the confidence that you have in yourself when people are talking slower, and helps the other person participate in the conversation a little better.
Exactly. Yeah.
I can
You know,
resonate.
it's like saying, "Oh, I need my glasses. Let me, similarly, I need you to talk slowly." We need to have the same kind of comfort in saying, advocating for ourselves. Yes.
And Gordon, you do have a question.
Yes. Excuse me, a little while ago, you were talking about the testing that you've done and the testing you haven't done. And I was wondering while you were talking about it, I think you were saying that when someone would, um, let's say, gets on the cycle or the treadmill and goes really fast, really hard for a few minutes and then stops. And I think you said that that helps with speech, you think.
Speed. No, it doesn't help with speech. It helps with processing speed. So pushing a button on the
Oh,
keyboard.
processing speed. That's what I want to ask you. I want to get that clear.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. The
Okay,
studies
so
we have done are with health adults without aphasia, and they do not show any benefits in speech.
I remember that.
But that's probably because they do not have trouble with speech to begin with. I wanted to do the study with people with aphasia, and we have not got ethics approval yet for that part. And I need to have a collaborator who has, a medical background in exercise physiology, because when you put a person who's had a stroke on a bicycle or a treadmill and have them exercise vigorously, it might push their heart to have, a risk. It's a risk. So I do need, they said, the ethics board, which I totally understand, is that I need an exercise physiologist and a EMT standing next to them while they do the study. So it requires some collaboration and organization, which I have now put to the back burner to do another day.
Well, just so you know, doctor, I could help you with that.
Oh, that's wonderful to know. We can
But
communicate. Yeah.
that would require a conversation.
You study me? I got lots of stuff. There's a party in my body. I'd be bored with you guys at the University of Maryland. You will not be bored with me.
Well, thank you, everyone. I think that Yasmin, thank you very much for your presentation, and I think that this very will really help with people. But thank you.
It's my pleasure. It was nice to talk to all of you as well.
Thank you, doctor. Thanks, Mark.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.